Good morning. It's Monday, which means I'm back again for another live stream. This is Tails from Studio Walter. Hello. Today I'm in Foundry Virtual Tabletop, and I'm going to be showing off the new Dungeon Map Tiles 5 port that I've done recently, which is now up and available to download from Foundry. So let's jump right in. So what we're going to be doing is doing a map build. Why is my mic sound a little weird? Okay. Okay, so first thing we're going to want is a scene. So this is I've been doing a bit of testing in here for a number of things, so I've got stuff in here from a different game. But let's create a scene. Let's just call it a test scene. And we're not going to put it in a folder. It's going to have it out there in the open. Okay, so when building a scene, the main thing you're going to want to do, or what I like to do, is set the zoom to 1. 1 means zoom is at 100%, which is what we want. It's pretty good. Then we need to go over to our grid, set the grid size from the default of 100 to 180. Because the grid size that I use for all of my map tiles art assets is 180. Now that gives us a scale of each real world inch equaling 3 on-screen pixels. And that'll give us, so 180 pixels will give us on screen a 5-foot grid square. So we leave the grid square or grid scale at 5 feet per each unit. I like to set the padding down to 0 because I find that you really only need padding around your maps if you need to stage assets off your map that you then bring onto the map later on. But usually I don't need that. Next thing, scaled scene dimensions. This is how big your map is going to be in pixels. Now, because we're using a grid size of 180, what you want to do is set your scene dimensions to be in multiples of 180, which is basically grids, multiples of grid squares. So let's just say, let me get a calculator up. Oops. Okay, so let's just say we're making I'll make just a little map. So let's just say we're making a 9 by 9 map. That would be 180 times by 9 grid squares. That gives us 1,620. So we come along, 1,620. So we're going to make a square map. So 1,620. And then we go save. It'll ask us to accept the changes and the fact that it's going to maybe reload the scene to change dimensions. And there we go. There is our scene. It's at 100% zoom. Each square is 180 pixels. And we're pretty much ready to go. So to start building our map, we're going to be using the tile placement capabilities of Foundry. Now, how we get to that, if you're a new user to Foundry, is you'll see this double column of icons up the top here, top left. Now, they all have different, they all do different things, and I recommend reading the documentation for Foundry to find out what they all do, because I'm only going to concentrate on the ones that we're going to need for map building. And the one we're going to need is in the first column, this little icon here that looks like 3 boxes called tile controls. Click on that and you'll see that the second set of icons change. So the one at the very top, select tiles. This is how you go into that mode and you can select tiles. So it allows you to draw out a selection box. Actually, let's get the game paused out of the way. So it allows you to draw out a selection box to select multiple items, and allows you to click on individual items to select them. The next one is tile placement. You're pretty much in tile placement mode all the time. It's really the select tile mode that you need to sort of switch into, because you're kind of in place tile mode generally all the time. The next icon down is the tile browser, which is what we want. And the next one down after that is the foreground layer, so that when that is highlighted, we are placing items into the foreground. Generally, you don't need to highlight it, because we're going to be spending most of the time placing our items, because we're building an adventure map. We're going to be spending most of our time placing items into the background, so you're pretty much not going to need that one. The last one down is force snap to grid vertices. I leave that on by default, and I'll show you why in just a moment. But the one that we're going to need is the tile browser, which when you click on that, it will bring up this window. Now this is pretty much just the file browser of Foundry, but it also acts as the image browser or asset browser for building an adventure map. So what you're going to want to do is sort of move it over to the right hand side, or you can just hide the right hand side menu and put this over there. So that way you've got a building area here, and you've got your asset search here. Now, the dungeon map tiles, in order to get the module to work in your campaign, what you need to do is go to your game settings, go to manage modules. I'm going to turn this one off. I'm going to turn, oops, looks like I haven't installed the module I want, but I know it's there. So basically you turn on the modules by clicking these little buttons, clicking save module settings. It again will ask you to confirm it and understand that you now need to reload the scene. Just go yes, it'll do its thing. My poor old computer will go blank for a bit. Okay, and then it's reloaded. Now when you come over here to the side, you can click on compendium packs. You should see a folder called Studio Wildfire. Hopefully everything ends up in the right place. So you open the Studio Wildfire folder. You should see, depending if you've got different packs, you should see different folders. So for example, here's my adventure modules, and here is the map tiles packs. They should all be sitting in the map tiles packs folder. If they're not, something's broken, please let me know. I haven't, although I'm showing off the Dungeon Map Tiles 5 pack, I haven't actually installed it, although I know the files are there. So there should be a folder, like a little, what would be a good way of saying, a journal entry here like this. You can click on it. It's got a little README. It'll give you, my thank you. There's a brief tutorial about what to do, but importantly, it tells you where to find the files. Now, pretty much they're all going to be in this. They're going to be in modules, dungeon map tiles. Then whatever it is it 4 or 5, and it's by Roman numerals, and then images. That's pretty much all you need to know to find them. So let me just get out of here. Now, unfortunately, I haven't installed the module, but I know the pieces are there because I actually built it there. So I know that the pieces are where I want them to be. But let's get rid of this side panel because we don't need it for construction. And let's bring up our tile browser again. So in order to find it, I'll leave this center. So you can see here. So I'll give a breakdown on basically how this window works if you've not used it before. This section up the top here, that is basically the directory structure in text form. So for example, if I go into modules and then I go into, oh, I haven't actually put it up here. How stupid of me. So I'll go to Dungeon Map Tiles Pack 4. So you can see as we drop through the folders down here, in this bottom section. This section here, which is the file path, slowly starts to update. So if I click on images, so you can see that we're modules, dungeon map tiles 4, then images. It's a little annoying that I've forgotten to put dungeon map tiles 5 there. I probably took it out because I was testing, and it's a good idea to take things out when you're testing them. But anyway, actually what I could do, so yeah, that's how you get to, I'll just show you how this works, and then I'll actually go and I'll install the module from scratch, and hopefully that'll work. Oh, the fun of live streams. Okay, let's go back here. All right, so once you get into the images folder, you'll see all of the folders of the image of the art assets that you're looking for. So in Dungeon Map Tiles 5, we've got the courtyard, doors, grungy concrete and flagstones, the whole works. Now, next thing we need to look at is we can also do two things. We can filter the results. So if you want to just search, you can just search by text. So for example, if you're searching for floor, you go and search for floor items like that. Display mode, pretty much I leave it in the tile view the whole time. So when you've got folders, it just shows it like this. But if you've got items in there, like for example images, tile view, it will tile that view for you to see what all the images are in that folder. But I've been a silly git and I have not installed the pack that was supposed to be showing off today. So I'm going to return to my setup. I'm going to go to add-on modules. I'm going to go install a module. Hopefully it will. So let's go for dungeon map tiles. This will hopefully show me all the dungeon map tiles. It's probably having a bit of a heart attack because I'm streaming at the same time. Okay, so yes, I forgot to install it. How awesome! So if you're trying to install the modules for the very first time, this is what you do. You go to your setup, go to, hang on, let me just get this window out of the way. So go to your add-on modules, click on add-on modules, then click on install module, which will bring up this window when it eventually comes up. Here we are. It'll have, you know, all the different modules and stuff that people have. Do a search for dungeon map tiles, and it will show you all the different packs. So there's pack 5, 2, 4, 3, the original. Where's 2? Oh, 2's up here. So we want Dungeon Map Tiles 5 because I was the silly git and didn't install it. So we click on, assuming that you've purchased it, click on install. Then you'll see in the background here, if I get rid of this window, it went through and installed it. And it should be, if I look through the packs, there it is. It's installed just there. So what I'm going to do is drop back over to my game world, go back to my test world. Okay, as that goes through its thing, jump into my game master session. And we'll have to, once it finishes doing this, okay, so it's loaded back into my world, but we have to go back into manage modules, and we have to turn on Dungeon Map Tiles 5, so that we'll see it in the settings. So we click save module settings, it'll want to reload, go yes, get a blank screen while my computer thinks about it, because it's a poor old machine. Okay, so it should be, if we go and so if we go and check in our compendiums, map tile packs, Whoop, there it is. Okay, so we get a README file, which tells you, basically me saying, thank you very much, greatly appreciate it. But most importantly, and it's got a little tutorial down the bottom here that shows you how it works. Everything that I'm running through now is basically in this tutorial. But what we want is accessing the assets, which gives us the file path of where we can find all the assets. Now that I've actually installed them, they should be there, which is modules, Dungeon Map Tiles 5, images. So let's close this and close that and just make that small. Then we go back to our tile controls and tile browser. So now when we go to modules, there it is, Dungeon Map Tiles 5 or Dungeon Map Tiles V. V is the Roman numeral for 5. So we click on that and go to images, and there are our folders which contain our core assets. So from here, we want to build an adventure map. Now, building an adventure map is pretty simple, but there is a little bit of method which gives you best results. What you want to do, so let's just put this over here to the side, and we're going to start with a floor, the stone floor. Now, the best method is to build from the bottom up. And when I say from the bottom, I mean from the ground to the floor to your walls. Build up that way, because Foundry is, as good as the tools are for building maps, there are, it's not a dedicated map builder. So there's no layering, there's no layers palette. You can't see. So for example, if you were building in a graphics program, you would see that item. How you place items on or elements onto the map is quite simple. You just click and drag. And you'll see that as you click on them, so clicking on them will select the particular asset, and you just click and drag. Now you'll see that, or you'll actually feel, although that sounds funny with a computer, you'll actually feel that each map tile is snapping to the grid, which is why we leave this little icon here on, which is the force snap to grid vertices. So if we turned it off, which I'll do now, but that's on. Let's just turn it off. Oh, it's still snapping. I thought it would actually stop, but anyway, snapping is what we want. It's good because it'll just snap into place, which means we can line everything up really, really easily. If you don't want, let's just say you're putting objects into the scene. You've built your map and you want to put objects into the scene. You don't necessarily want them to snap to the grid. You may want to be able to just, place it sort of down in this corner, but not right on the corner. How you do that is while you're moving it around, hold down the shift key. So right at the moment, I'm holding down the shift key and I can put this anywhere I like. So let's just say I'm putting it a little bit off center. There we go. Same as this one. If I'm not holding down the shift key, it's going to force me to either place it according to the grid or halfway, which is also snapping to the grid. But if I hold down the shift key, I can put it, or it's not going to snap to the grid. So that can be quite handy when you're placing assets. So for example, like, if you're putting a pot plant or a table or something or other into the scene, you don't necessarily want it to snap to the grid. But with map tiles, we want them to snap to the grid, because that way we can just, we can just quickly grab in assets, put them in place. Like here's a floor to a room. I'm just quickly grabbing them out, and they're just snapping into place. Now, the reason why I say we need to build from the floor up is that as you place objects, they sort of get placed one on top of the other. So for example, if I place this map tile right there, now at the moment it looks okay because it's not overlapping anything. But if I drag this over here, see how it's now overlaying, or it's now overlapping these tiles below it? Although we don't have a layers palette so that we can just grab these items and move them up and down. There are tools which allow us to do that. So this is where the select tile option sort of comes into play. So you hit select tile, select a particular tile, then right click on it, and you'll get this set of options. Now we don't really need to worry about any of the other options. I'll explain those in a bit. But it's these two buttons here, and they're pretty self-explanatory. One is send to back, one is bring to the front, and they're pretty much if you click send to front, it will send it to the front of everything. If you click send to back, it will send to back of everything. So if I click this now, send to back, see how it just sent this tile behind all of these tiles. So it's not something that you can sort of use to sort of put this tile between tiles. It doesn't do that. It's either right at the back or right at the top. So the layering, although you don't really need to do too much layering, you do need to sort of understand that you kind of need to build from the bottom up. Now that becomes important when you start placing down the walls. So at the moment we've just placed down some floor. So let's just put in some corridors. So let's just say we're going to have a corridor come up this way, and then it's going to turn around and it's going to come back down. Comes back down here and meets up there. So let's just say, and then let's just say we have something come out here, and then we're going to have some steps. So you can see here that since we're in the stone floor folder, there are some subfolders. So we've got the base assets here, which is our floor. We've then got grass edge, large spiral steps, small spiral steps, and steps. Steps basically means they're square. They're not they go in one direction. So for example, if we grab this asset, you can see that the steps are going up this way. So here's down, here's up. We put in another one here. So we could then have, so we jump. Okay. This little button here, it's called traverse back. It basically means jump up one level or jump down a level in your folder structure. So if we have a look at the folder structure that we're in modules, dungeon map tiles 5, images, stone floor, steps. So steps is the folder that we're in. But let's just say we want to go back to stone floor. We just hit this button and it jumps us back to the stone floor because it's jumping down a level. It's a good way of thinking it. Or up a level, it's folder structure. There's no up or down. It's just basically going down. You know what I mean. Because here's the folder here, because this steps is actually inside that folder. So we're just going to grab that there, and then let's go and get back into steps, and we'll scroll down. We'll use these ones. So we'll have a bit of a spiral, not an actual spiral staircase, but it's more like a square set. Let's jump back into here, and then we want this one. So this could be coming around and going up levels. And then what we might do is we'll go back up, we'll grab another of these. There we go. And this would be kind of where we would fade out. So let's go to steps. Let's use this one. and just have that there. So we're going to have a room come in here. So technically, this would be going up and up and up, and then this would be going over a passage here. Okay, so let's put in these pieces to be the room that we're going in under in this like central core area. So let's just say it's our adventure map. So I'm not going through all the pieces. Like let's have a look at the grass edge. Grass edge is pretty self-explanatory. It's for building the grass edge of a building. Let's assume, just so we can sort of use this and see what it's like. Let's assume we've got the front of a building here. So we'll put some of these. Let's just... Where is... It's not allowing me to scroll for some reason. Where is... That's the one I was looking for. I just thought it'd be cool to have it sort of come out a bit. Then we need a corner, goes there. And then this one can go here. Then we need another corner. Goes just there. And then we need a turn, which is this one. And then another straight piece. There we go. So we just need to put a floor piece right there. Look, there we go. So that could be the outside of this building, which would mean that when we go and put a doorway in, we want to put a doorway sort of here, so it comes out to this grass area. So let's just say this is our floor of our map. Now we want to add in the walls. Now, one thing I'd recommend doing is once you've sort of gotten so far and you're about to go on to the next level, click to the select option and then drag out a selection. So you select a whole bunch of these tiles. Now, right click on one. We want to use this little key button, or this little lock. So we click on that lock. Now, what that means is that we can no longer modify those locked tiles. So if I deselect, so if I grab that one and try and move it, I can't do anything to it. And we get a little error message here saying, it's locked. So any of those tiles that we just picked up, they'll be outlined in red when we select them. So this one, and then this, so this one we can still move because we haven't locked it. But this one, we've locked it, so we can't move it. We can select them, but we can't move them. So let's go and select these ones down here. And again, lock them. Now, you'll see that I'm moving around the map. I'm doing that by simply right-clicking and moving the mouse. So you right-click and move. That's how moving around the map, or navigating the map works. Pretty simple. So, where is it there? So we want to, let's just lock these ones. Whoops. And then just grab all of these and lock them. There we go. So that, we do that simply because, and to deselect things, so if you've got like all this selected, you just draw a little selection box and it'll deselect things. Okay, so the reason why we go and lock them is that we want to now start building over the top of that by putting in our walls, and we don't want to accidentally move any of these tiles. So let's pop back here. So we want to go back up and we want to go to our walls folder, and here are our wall assets. So when you first jump into the walls folder, there are a bunch of folders on top which are specialist type walls, and then we've got our basic walls. So for example, our basic set of corners and basic straight sets of walls. So let's start building. Let's pop in the corners of this room just here. This is also where it shows why building the floor and then, the ground, then the floor, then the walls is important, because we're now placing these walls on top of these, pardon me, pardon me, try not to burp in your ear. We are placing these walls on top of these map tiles, and it's important because, so I've selected that now, I right click now, because if we go and change the layering order, so if I click send it back, again, it's sent it behind these floor tiles, which is not what we want. We want it above these floor tiles. Okay, so that should get that. Okay, let's put our some more corners in. So we've got corners there and there. And now we're going to need a doorway just here. And we have a folder called Cornerstones and Doorways. So we go into there. Now you'll notice that I've got a bunch of cornerstones where it's just one cornerstone artwork, but then we've got doorways which have either side of the doorway. See? Just there and there. And then we want these guys to go here. Like so. And that creates the artwork for that corner where the doorway is. And then we just finish off the wall. So that could be the wall, the front wall of our building. So we've got inside here, so we've got a corridor that comes around here. Now we can build that very quickly with passageways. So if we scroll back up the top here and we go into our passageways folder. So we go and put a corner piece here and a corner passageway there. And where is another one? There. Put that up the top. And then we use our straight sections. Where is it? Straight sections. Here we are. So that one there, and that one there, and then that one just there, and a last one whoop, there. So again, just here, because we've got pieces missing in the corners, so we want to jump back up to our walls and back into our cornerstones, and we want to use doorway just there, and where is it? This one just here. And that is our passageway around that side completed. So we scroll over here. Now this is going to be the fun part. So we're going to have this will be mostly passageways up and around through here, but there's a little room in the middle here, which also means I put the wrong. This one should probably go there, because there'll be a doorway here and a doorway here. So let's grab our doorway pieces. We want this one to go here, because that comes in through that. Now, we only want a cornerstone here and a flat wall here. So scroll up to the top, grab that piece. That goes there, so we've got a cornerstone right there. Jump back up a folder, and then we just build out that wall along there. And then we need some corners, goes in there. And then we need this one up there. And then we need some flat wall along here. Here we go. And cornerstone right there. So let's scroll back up. Let's use a curved piece. There we go. So that is that little room just inside with this staircase going up around the outside of it. So let's put in the staircase. And again, I'm going to use the passageway tiles. But I'm going to use, instead of these square corners, I'm going to use the curved corners. And you'll see that there is a bit of poke through with the tiles that are underneath. But here's the thing. You don't have to worry about the poke through, because when we put in the dynamic lighting information, it will hide that poke through. Because players won't be able to see on the other side. So here is a corner, and here is another one. Where is it? Over the side. So we need this one. Here we are. And then some passageways to connect it all up. Just like that. So there we go. It comes in, goes around, around, and then up. So we need a dead end here. Now, where are our dead ends? Dead ends are here. Just in a folder called dead ends. And we want this one. There we go. So that would be our transition to the next level. Just here. Because this would be going up, 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 and over this passageway. And that is pretty much, you know, that's a simple little map. So let's just make through here. Just go back up to our stone floor, because that's where we have the grass edge, and let's just put some more pieces along here. So that way it goes, you know, all the way across. And then some walls. There we go. So we just need to use these pieces. Just like that. And that is our dungeon map. Let's put a door in. We have some doors. Wooden door. Here we are. So let's just pop a wooden door right there. So that is our map. Close it off. So it's a quick little map, just to show you how it all works. Now, let's add some dynamic lighting. Obviously, we'd also go and add, you know, some furniture and some other bits and pieces. Let's just assume that there's some pieces in there. But I want to show how you add the dynamic lighting in. But again, I'm going to go into selection mode. And I'm going to select all these pieces. I'm going to hit lock. So locking them all. So that way we don't accidentally move them. Same thing with these pieces down the front here. Whoops. And lock. There we go. So all of our map, whoop, that's not locked. That's not locked. This one locked? That's locked. Excellent. Okay, so all of the pieces of our map are locked in place, so we shouldn't accidentally move pieces around. Good. Now, with dynamic lighting, first thing we need to do is we need to draw in the data that's effectively going to be blocking our lights. Now, the reason we do that is that if we created a light, and I'm just going to go into our light controls. So if you're modifying the lighting for your map, you'll see that there's a little light bulb here. Clicking on that one will change the second row or second column of icons. And there will be a different set of icons. So there's clear lights, there's reset the fog of war, and there's the great thing about Foundry is it has a little video when you mouse over the icons that show you what the button means. So reset fog of war is the fog of war that what your characters can see. The next item above that is transition to darkness, which again exactly does what it says on the label. It will move your map from, at the moment we have it in daylight, it'll move it to nighttime, which is what I want to do, but I'm just going to explain what each of the buttons do at the moment. Okay, next button is transition. Oop, I keep accidentally hitting the game pause. The next button up there is transition to daylight. Same thing as transition to darkness, except it's going to daylight. Then we have Game Master Vision. You set that mode and you can see what the Game Master is seeing. Then we have Adjust Scene Darkness. That is where you can adjust, how dark it is in your scene. So you'll see that there are two settings here at the moment. There is daylight and there is nighttime darkness. You can actually make it brighter or darker depending what you want for your scene. You do that in that little slider, and then the top button is draw a light source. That's primarily what we're going to be using, but the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to transition the map to darkness, and as you'll see, it'll slowly become darker, and you'll see on the slider here, this little box actually shows you where you are in the darkness degree. So let's just hide that. Okay, so we're in darkness, which is good because I want to place a light to show you what happens with the lighting if you don't have any data in there. So let's just say I'm going to put a light right here and I'm going to make it pretty big. So at the moment with this light, it's flooding the map, but it's also going outside of the walls of the map. And that is because we haven't added in any wall data. So as we add in the data, this light will become constrained by the walls. But as you can see here, I can move this light around and it's not being modified by the walls because there's no data there. So let's get rid of that light. I'm going to transition back to daylight because I find building the wall information in a properly lit map, it just works a little better. Now, in order to put in the wall data, we're going to need to use this button here called Wall Controls. So we hit Wall Controls, and again, it'll change the second column of icons. Now there's a heap of icons here. Again, they are pretty self-explanatory, and there is a little video that shows you how it works. Selection, top one is selection. That's pretty much, how you select and move the data points around. The next one is basic walls. You're pretty much going to be doing most of your building with basic walls. The next one down after that is terrain walls. Now, the best way to think of terrain walls are hills. So let's just say in hills or something that where characters can stand on top of it. So it would block a character's line of sight if they were on one side of it. But if they were standing on top of it, it will not block their line of sight. That's the best way to think about terrain walls. So with the example of a hill, if your character was on one side of the hill, their view will be blocked by the hill if they're trying to see something on the other side of the hill. But if they were on top of the hill, they'd be able to see all around. That's the best way to think about. Invisible walls, again, pretty much works the way you think an invisible wall will work. It blocks movement, but you can see through it. Ethereal walls, they block sight and hearing, but you can move through them. Doors, again, does what it says on the label. You draw out a door between 2 points and you can open and close it, and it blocks movement and it can block line of sight. We'll be using that quite a bit as well. Next one down, secret doors. Again, they don't show up, so they can be open and closed and you'll be able to move through it and see through it. But when it is closed, it will look no different to the rest of the wall. Usually what you do is you can combine secret door data for dynamic lighting with artwork that can hide the door, hide the wall or door in some way. Then we have windows. They work like doors. You can open and close them. Sometimes you can't move through them, that sort of thing. And then there's a clone walls, and there is a force snap to grid vertices, followed by a the next option down here, second last, is close all doors. Pretty self-explanatory. If you have a lot of doors on your map, and you may have them open for some reason during a game, clicking this button will close them all. So we want to add some basic walls. So we just highlight, click on the basic walls icon. Unfortunately, my one criticism of Foundry is that I find that their highlighting of buttons, which you currently have active, is not that good. Like at the moment, you can see that there's a little orangey red line around the border of that button. I kind of like the idea of how they highlight this button down here, and think they should do that for buttons that you currently have highlighted or active, because I find this just highlighting the edge is not enough of a notification. But anyway, my gripe over. So you click on basic walls and you start drawing out your basic walls. Now, as you go, you'll notice that it's snapping to points. The points are rather small compared to the actual map. So for example, I think it's about 10 points per grid square. And again, if you don't want it to snap to any of those points, hold down shift. So grab, start moving around, and then hold down shift, and you'll notice that it no longer snaps. But I find using the snap to points very good. So I'll just zoom in a bit so you can see what I'm doing. So see how it's sort of snapping to points? Snapping to points is good because what you do is, as you build your walls, you just snap them to the grid square points, like what I'm doing now. So you just start there. So you left click, draw out. Left click, draw out a line, and it'll combine at these points where they overlap. So left click, draw out a line. Left click, draw out a line. Unfortunately, what can happen is that if you mouse over, let's just say you want to continue from here. If you try and just click and draw again, it'll, because this one's already highlighted, it'll just start moving that around. Let's just see if, yeah, again, does it like that. If you end up in that situation, just create a line somewhere off to the side and then just drag it into position. There we go. So what you want to do is you want to go around your entire map and add in this wall data around your entire map. Come down here and do the same thing. And then this is, so we put it there and put it there. Oops. And then draw one all the way along here. And all the way along there a bit as well. So we're just adding in the walls. That this is telling Foundry where we want the dynamic lighting to stop, and where we want it to start creating shadows created by our walls. Now you'll notice that I'm basically drawing, I'm drawing these on the grid. You could, if you wanted to, follow the actual contours of the wall. Like for example, you could start drawing out here. It'll work, except you're going to be masking out a lot of your wall artwork, and I find people like having the artwork showing through. It's also personal preference. Oops. There we go. So I'll show you how I like to do these curves in just a moment. Get the bulk of this done. Now, you could see that I could go and do this a little bit differently. I could just move that back. I could come to here. Could do that like that. That it will finesse a little better like that. Now, have I drawn? Oh, to zoom in and out is your mouse wheel. Zooming in and out, mouse wheel. The only problem that I have with the mouse, zooming in and out with the mouse wheel, is it's difficult to get back to 100%, and there's no real indicator that how to get back to 100%, which is why I like put this here. So if anyone knows how to just basically rezoom back to 100%, please let me know, because I don't know how to do it. Okay, so how to do these curves. The best way to do it is to pick a position where you're sort of in the middle, about there, draw in a piece. Sort of get it, so it's looks about right. And then just draw in, and this is where I'm letting it click to those grid points that you can't see within the grid. There we go. So there's our curved wall. Do the same thing over here. Whoops. Whoops, whoops, whoops. So get rid of pieces that you don't want. So you go up to select. Select them and delete. Then go back into the walls, draw it a piece, click it. Why is it doing that? Oh, it's probably just doing that because I'm actually drawing outside the map. Delete. Let's watch. If I do this inside the map, yeah, it actually allows me to select, and there we go. Select and move. So then we've got another one down here. So again, draw in the middle bit, get it pretty much where we want it, and then put in the extra pieces. So see how there is this bit of poke through? So we don't need to worry about that because players aren't really going to see that because their vision's going to be in here. They're going to see a bit of the wall, and that's going to get cut off by the fog of war with the dynamic line of sight line blocking it just through here. Or at least that's what should happen. Now we've got a doorway here. So we've drawn in all of our wall sections. So that should be all the walls that we need to put in. So let's put in our doorway. So again, go over here, click on draw doors. I just like to zoom in a bit. Then I like to just, as I do with other sections where I was building those curves, I just draw in a bit of wall somewhere else and then move it into position. Just like so. And that is our door. Now, fun part. We're going to go back to our lighting controls. So as you click on lighting controls, you'll notice all that data that we've just put in has disappeared. It hasn't been deleted, it's just being hidden because we're in a different mode. So if we go back to the walls, whoop, there it all is. So we go back to our lighting controls. Just going to go to, that looks about 100%. And go to draw a light source. So let's just assume that there is a light hanging from the ceiling in the middle of this room. So it's going to start here and we're going to draw it in. And it's a pretty big light. Now we can't see it at the moment, although I've put it in, you can't see it. You can see these white lines that are being drawn in. This is telling us the extent of that light. Now you can see it's sort of being cut off by the walls. you can't really see it at the moment because we're in daylight. So let's transition to darkness. And as we start to go to darkness, the map will go darker. You'll see the light starts to have more an effect. And you see this white line, which is actually telling us where the light is actually falling. And it's being modified by the wall data that we have put in. So if I zoom out a bit, so see how it's only sort of filling these areas that we've set in, and it's not going through the door because we've set the door, or when a door gets created, it's actually closed. So if we were in game mode, we can actually open that door. So if I switch up here to token controls, see how that little icon, the door icon, has just popped in. So if I open it, whoop, the light now shines out the door. But if I close it, whoop, the light is now not shining through the door. Okay, let's go back to lighting controls. One thing I like to do with the lights is that it's kind of a good way to move around a map. So grab the light, move it. You'll notice that it's snapping to the grid. I like to hold down shift, so that way it's moving smoothly. But it's a good way of sort of working out what can characters see as they're moving around your map. You know, they can see, and again, here, this is what I was talking about, the poke through. You don't really need to worry about it because if it's outside the line of sight, the characters aren't really going to see it. It's not really too much to worry about. Like it doesn't visually look good as a game master because, you know, you can see this, but your characters can't see beyond that, what the light can see or what the light is displaying. So I like to use the lights, sort of move the lights around to work out, you know, line of sight, where to hide things, where to put things. It's a good way of sort of working out what characters will be able to see things. So for example, if you had characters here, you could hide things down here, or you could hide things down here because their characters in this room are not going to see them down there. Same thing about, you know, putting things here. You could put things in here and the characters won't see them until they actually get, you know, somewhere about here. Same thing about this walkway. Characters won't see them. But let's cover putting in lights in your scene. So let me just delete that light. When you're in the lighting controls, again, this column will change. And because I have transitioned to darkness, you'll notice that the highlights on the buttons are actually a little bit different. And they actually show up really good. As much as I was complaining about the borders before, they actually show up really good when the scene is dark. But they don't show up really good when the scene is sort of like in daylight, or you've got very light colors in the scene. But anyway, that's my personal gripe. Pardon me. To create a light, you want to use the top button, which is draw light source. Draw light source. And it's quite simple. You draw a light source. So you left click, draw it in, and you start drawing out how big you want that light source to be. So I'm going to draw it pretty big, to about this big, because this can demonstrate two things. With a light source, there is your bright area. So this is bright light, and then there is your dim light. Now to control these features, because when you're just drawing a light, it's half and half. If you want to numerically control these features, double click on the light and you will get this panel. Up the top here is the coordinates of where the light is. So for example, if I move that, the coordinates will change. Let's put it back there. The elevation of the light is high, how high off the ground this light is. Generally, I don't do much with that. It comes into play if you're playing around with things at different levels, but I generally don't. I try to keep things simple. That's just mostly my personal choice. Light radius is where the work gets done. So if we set this to be, so dim light is say 20 feet, you can see how the light has now increased in size. So it is emanating dim light up to 20 feet away from the light source. So 20 feet ends about here. But I didn't change how much bright light there is. So you'll see that there is dim light and there is bright light. Bright was left at about 6 feet. So let's just make that 5. So you can see how it's kind of small where the bright light is. But if we made this, say, 10 feet, it's gotten bigger. We could make this 20 feet. And now there's no difference. I'll actually show it on this side. There's no dim light. There's basically, it goes 20 feet and then to darkness, a fade to darkness. Most lights don't work like that. They go, so for example, if we had dim light added to 20, you'd probably have bright light out to 10, because that looks more natural. If you check your, so for example, if you're using Pathfinder or if you're using Dungeons and Dragons, most of the light sources in the game mechanics will actually tell you what degrees of light they shed, dim or bright. So for example, I think a candle has dim light out to 10 feet and bright light for 5. So that would be a candle. I could be wrong. I think a torch, like for example a burning wall torch, I think is dim light to 20 and bright light to 10. But you can play around with these numbers and get it to the way that you like it. Now, the next most important thing is constrained by walls. That's the little tick box. If you turn it off, the light will ignore wall data and shed light everywhere. We want to leave it on. So that way the light looks more dynamic, more natural. There is emission angle. Now this is where you get to build some funky lights. So you can actually, if I move the emission angle down, see how it's how much. So at the top is 360. It's light in all directions. So if we went down to say 180, it's light on one side. If we went down to say 45, this could be like light from a sensor or light from a bullseye lantern. Rotation angle is exactly what you think it is. Which direction is that light shining out from that source? Generally, you're not going to need to play with these. You're just going to be leaving it as a normal light source. There are light appearance options. It's a good idea, just fiddle with the light options, figure out what works for you. Because you could have a light that is creating darkness instead of light. And next option, which I do like to play with, is light animation. There are a number of animations that are already set here. Personally, because I'm making medieval maps, I'm dealing with light sources that are generally either a candle or a burning torch or a lantern. So, and lanterns are basically a candle on the inside, a candle or a burning flame in some form. And you get the best looking effects if you use, if I can find it, flickering light. So that gives you a random sort of slightly pulsing effect, which is similar to how a candle or a burning light works. So that's pretty much what I use the most. There's also torch, which is sort of like the flickering light, but it's more like it's sort of a bigger pulsation, would be a good way of saying it, which is what torches often do. Torches or campfires often do that. I pretty much use those and just leave the settings as is. And then update light. So if I click back to token controls, you can see the light disappears, or that icon disappears, because you don't want to have that showing when you're playing your game, and just the door information. So if we open the door, we can see the lights shining through the doorway, which looks pretty cool. So what you would do is you would go and put in all the light sources that you have on your map. So if we come back here, let's go and let's assume that this is it's a flickering light, but it's a pretty constrained one. So it's only a candle, so it'd be 10 feet for dim light, 5 feet for the bright light. Oops, I didn't update my lights. Let's go back. So 10, and 5. And then put the animation back to a flickering light, and then update light. So that could be our light. Just, if it was, say, a lantern hanging from the ceiling. Let's say that it's on a table and it's over in this corner. There we go. Then we could have another light in here. So if we select our light, press Control C to copy it. Now, where I move my mouse to, if I press Control V and paste, it'll paste a copy of that light at that position. So again, I'm going to hold down Shift and I'm going to move it into the corner. Let's just say that there's a table with a light right there. And then we can have another one. Let's just say that there is a lantern attached to the wall here and here. So we come into here, we go create, and we go create. And I'm going to zoom in a bit because I want to have these guys right on the wall. So I want to see where, yep, that's where it. So let's just say we've got one right there. And then we've got one right there. So that would be we should also have lights up our hallway, but let's just say that they're actually at the corners. So we're going to put one in here. Oops. Okay. Copy that. Paste one there. Paste one there. And paste one there. So we've got lanterns on these curved walls. And maybe we'll have a lantern, outside the building. Put one there. And then I'll use Shift to put them just there. And the same thing with this one. So I'm going to put him just there. There we go. So you can see the light is actually going through the doorway because at the moment the doorway is open. So if we scroll out a bit, so we can see our whole map, go back to token controls, and our map looks far more interesting now. So if we close our door, the light from outside is not spilling inside. The light from inside is only affecting what's inside. And, it looks a whole lot more dynamic and a whole lot more interesting for your players to explore. Obviously, you'd want to put furniture and props and whatnot scattered throughout your map. But this was just a quick little tutorial to show you how you can build maps in Foundry using Dungeon Map Tiles 5. I hope you've had a good time watching. I hope this has been educational. If you'd like to see more of my rambling, please like, subscribe, the whole deal. You know how it is. Thank you very much, and have fun building adventure maps.